Dear friends from all over the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the China Gulf Forum 2021. My name is Lin, and I am a co-chair of the China Gulf Forum. On behalf of the planning team, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. Before we start, if you would like to have real-time subtitles, you can use the closed caption function in the menu bar. In 2019, the China Gulf Forum grew from a vision of a group of students at York University Abu Dhabi. This vision was to bridge more inclusive conversations between China and the Gulf region as we witness their growing relationship with one another. Please allow me to share a video clip that brings us together back to the China Gulf Forum in 2019. The China Gulf Forum at York University Abu Dhabi was the first student-led forum in the region that addresses the complexities of China-Gulf relations. It brings together scholars, leaders, and specialists from diverse backgrounds to shed light on the opportunities and challenges of the partnership. During the times of the pandemic, this partnership has continued to show resilience. This year, we had the pleasure of inviting a diverse group of speakers to share their insights into this partnership. We sincerely hope you will find this dialogue informative, engaging, and valuable. Without further ado, please allow me to invite the Vice Chancellor of York University Abu Dhabi, Dr. Mariët Westermann, to offer her welcome remarks.
Well, hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name, as you heard, is Mariët Westermann. I am the Vice Chancellor of NYU Abu Dhabi. I want to join Lin in welcoming you to the Gulf China Forum 2021. It's, as you saw, the second iteration of this annual conference that was conceived and organized entirely by our students at NYU Abu Dhabi. It was really wonderful to see just now that in-person activity that we long for, and it really is my hope that the next annual Gulf China Forum will indeed be on our campus again, and I'll say more about that in just a second. First, I want to extend my profound thanks to Lin and her fellow organizers for creating this opportunity for the academic, the business, the healthcare, and diplomatic communities to come together to discuss the evolution of the relationships between China, the Gulf, and the broader MENA region. It's such an important topic. I also want to thank all of our speakers for joining us over the next 2 days. So the program covers many priority areas for exchange, collaboration, and careful diplomatic interactions between the Gulf countries and China, this rising global power. I am not an expert in most of these topics, but I can say something about 2 areas of profound importance to NYU Abu Dhabi as an educational institution and community, and to me as an educator a professor and leader of an international research university that is grounded in the UAE and also in New York and China, as it turns out. First, the first of these two things. The COVID-19 pandemic has clarified many realities of our lives. We all know that. And China-Gulf relations are no exception. The benefits for the UAE of active diplomacy with China have become unusually evident during this public health crisis, as the UAE government has worked with China to secure a rapid and large supply of the Sinopharm vaccine for the country, and even many additional doses to be shared with countries in the MENA region and beyond that did not have such access. And this was not simply an initiative of the UAE to secure doses, although that's of course important. The UAE leadership ensured that before rolling out the Sinopharm vaccine, it would go through one of its largest trials here in the country with the permission and encouragement of Sinopharm. So since last summer, 31,000 UAE citizens and residents have volunteered, and the vaccine has therefore been found to be safe and effective in preventing infection up to 80% of the time and preventing serious disease altogether. This trial couldn't have come to pass if the UAE and China had not been investing in building supportive diplomatic relationships in a range of areas of business, science, technology, and so forth over the past decade. From these arrangements, our campus, as have many universities around the UAE, we've already had the unusual benefit in the world today of being able to offer vaccines to most of our students, faculty, staff, and their families. This head start on vaccination for the country and for our institution means that NYU Abu Dhabi can begin to look forward to the time we will be able to ramp up campus activity to something that will look like our lively fall of 2019, when, as you saw, this first forum was held in person. I am very hopeful we will have it back in person next year. Second, I want to say something about higher education and academic research in general as inherently global and international endeavors. While the world obviously has known national universities and national policies around academic curricula, and also the protection of national interests in research, hot topic issue, of course, for at least 2 centuries, higher education has also always been an international, a worldly enterprise. Even though universities have the name universal in their name, so to speak, the word universal, no university can study or teach everything under the sun by itself. It's simply not feasible. Knowledge and ideas have therefore always traveled with scholars and teachers, and students have always traveled some distance and often very far to study with inspiring teachers and to learn with fellow students. As early as 1919, more than 100 years ago, 2 American university presidents and a former Secretary of State of the United States created the Institute of International Education to foster study abroad in the wake of this devastating First World War. They sought to establish international fellowships, ever more prestigious today, and to promote trans-border collaborations in research and assist scholars who find themselves in conditions of warfare or other impossible situations through their work. Ever since the creation of that Institute of International Education 100 years ago, more and more students from ever more different countries have participated in study abroad. In many universities today, students now pretty much expect an opportunity to study away. NYU Abu Dhabi, our own institution, a resolutely international university in the UAE, was founded on the principle that it would bring together strong cohorts of students from the UAE and the region with peers from around the world. Today, our 1,700 or more undergraduate and graduate students hail from more than 115 countries, including many students from China and other East Asian nations. NYU Abu Dhabi was also founded on the principle that students could study at least one semester and often more in one of NYU's other campuses or study away sites around the world, a total of some 15 different sites on 6 continents. Many students do more than that and travel also regionally, at least before the pandemic we did, and we will again, travel regionally with their professors to conduct research and launch projects for social good. One of the most popular study abroad campuses for our students and for our professors actually is NYU Shanghai, our slightly younger sibling that was established in 2012. And likewise at NYU Abu Dhabi, we enjoy visiting students from NYU Shanghai every semester. They come to us to study subjects that are less easily available on their campus, such as in the arts and certain sciences, just as our NYU Abu Dhabi students go to Shanghai to take courses in areas we don't have as much coverage in. This is just acting on that principle that not every university can do everything equally well. So that small example within NYU of international exchange between universities in the Gulf and China plays out in so many other contexts. The organizers of this Gulf-China Forum point out that the rise of increasingly close interactions between the Gulf and China, of course, comes with enormous potential for both regions, but also with some lingering differences that need to be addressed. At NYU Abu Dhabi, we understand that overcoming such differences can't just be handled at a governmental level, but that it takes vigorous interactions between civil society institutions, universities, perhaps first and foremost. Universities first and foremost because they are full of creative and open people, and especially young people, who want to create a better and more cooperative world system. Our students are trained to solve problems together with people from very different countries and cultures. As I said, they come from 115 or more countries, so they're used to working in this international way. Universities are key to opening up civil relations between countries at all levels because scholarship of the highest caliber of accomplishment requires international collaboration and data sharing, with all the right protocols around it, of course. We have all witnessed the power of that reality, the need for international collaboration in science this past year, as Chinese scientists posted the coronavirus genome online as early as January 11th, 2020, and they did so to the unending gratitude of the human community. The world's scientists responded to this initiative by applying all of their collective and individual research heft to designing tests, remedies, and above all, vaccines in record time. And in the interest of getting on top of this scourge, they pulled together. The world scientific community set aside many of the traditional protections of intellectual property and rights of first publication, just so we could get on with creating these vaccines. And thinking about all that, this forum makes me hopeful for the future. The pandemic experience has shown us that when science, the academy, and industry come together across national borders, they can move mountains, they can change tides. Our students at NYU Abu Dhabi and in so many universities in the Gulf and in China are showing us how, at a time when governments are focused on closing borders sometimes, the path to the well-being of all leads through international solidarity and knowledge exchange. Enjoy the Gulf China Forum 2021.
Thank you so much, Dr. Westermann, for your brilliant remarks. Next, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, the advisor to leadership for New York University Abu Dhabi and the former deputy president of New York University, Diane Yu. Professor Diane Yu is also the executive director of Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Community Programs and the former chief of staff and deputy to the NYU president. Professor Yu was a White House fellow and was the first Asian American to chair any American Bar Association section or division, and the first woman of color to chair the ABA Commission on Women in the Profession. I will now hand it over to Professor Diane Yu. Welcome.
Thank you so very, very much. I am honored to be the keynote speaker for this amazing conference. And I want to commend my former students, Lynn and Enshu, for being the co-chairs of this outstanding event. I also want to thank Mariët Westermann, the Vice Chancellor of NYU Abu Dhabi, for her inspiring remarks. There are few scholar leaders I admire more than Mariët Westermann. Well, first of all, if we were doing this in person and there was a podium, I would immediately worry that you would not see me over the top of the podium because I'm a bit on what they call the diminutive side, and I've had that problem before. But thanks to Zoom, I could tell you I was 6 feet tall and you wouldn't know the difference. So I am happy to start off by saying I am not 6 feet tall, but I am indeed very honored and pleased to be here today. I've been asked to talk a little bit about my own personal case history because it's been unusual that I've had the experience. I'm based in New York City, and the background I have here is of the NYU Abu Dhabi facility at 19 Washington Square North on the campus of NYU in New York. But I've also had an extraordinary opportunity to be involved in cross-cultural awareness and understanding activities as a Chinese American woman making her way in the UAE. So what I'm going to do today is tell you 3 stories. The first story is about the beginnings of my journey and how I found myself at NYU and poised at the border of the UAE. The second story is what I actually did in creating the Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed community programs. And the third is my reflections about what it has meant to me and some thoughts and reflections about what I've learned from those cross-cultural experiences. So let's start with story 1, which is on a warp speed basis, my origins. I'm the second daughter of Chinese immigrant physicians who risked never seeing their families again to move to the United States after World War II. My mother ended up studying at Duke University for her post-medical study and did a residency at the University of Rochester Medical Center. My father went to England and Scotland and did his post-medical work, switched from tropical medicine to cardiology, and then ended up being hired by the University of Rochester Medical Center in the cardiology department. My 3 sisters and I were all born in Rochester at the hospital where my parents were working, and we're eternally grateful to them for their courage and determination in making such a bold move and for their leadership example. I always say that whatever good I have done, I owe to them, and whatever bad, it's all on me. And I attribute my optimism to what they've taught me and how they showed me how to be brave in the world and take advantage of opportunities that come my way. That optimism has been integral and indispensable in preparing me for some of the greatest adventures I've ever had. They simply exemplified service, lifelong learning, and kindness in everything they did. Well, after high school, I went to Oberlin College. I taught English as a second language in Taiwan, and I went to law school at Berkeley. For many years, I was very happy practicing law. I served as a judicial officer. I was a White House fellow and was general counsel for the State Bar of California. I argued appellate cases in the California Supreme Court, and I won a case in the US Supreme Court. I was having a great time as a lawyer, and suddenly and surprisingly, when I bumped into John Sexton, whom I had known for many years at a conference in San Francisco in 2001, I realized he was starting to recruit me. He wanted me to join his team because he was considering an offer to become the 15th president of NYU at that time. Now, I had known him, but I never managed that we'd end up working together years later. It just goes to show you, you never know who is watching you and biding their time. I mean, I had been a lawyer's lawyer, and therefore it was a seismic shift for me to leave the law and go to NYU, to go to academia. I had been very involved in the legal profession and spent years trying to make it better, more diverse, and more open to all. I helped establish 3 Asian American bar associations in the country. I was active, in the American Bar Association, chairing the section of legal education and admissions to the bar, which is actually how I met John. and the Commission on Women, as Lynn already mentioned. So why did I give up the law? I guess I'd always considered job moves in terms of three factors. First, the challenge. Second, the quality and integrity of the people. And third, the opportunities for growth. I guess I felt I'd hit a growth plateau in law, and the prospect of being in on the ground floor in John's new administration at NYU seemed too great an opportunity to pass up. He had been a brilliant law school dean at NYU, and I thought perhaps he could work similar wonders as president of NYU, the largest private university in America. I was not sure exactly what he saw in me that made him want to recruit me for his team, but I knew a chance like this wouldn't come around again. So I took the leap. My late beloved husband, Michael, and I, he's also a lawyer, moved to Manhattan in August 2001. Everything was fine. We were unpacking our boxes from the move. And then 3 weeks later, 9/11 struck. We almost left, but after great consideration, we decided to stay in the city, and I'm forever glad we did. After a bit of a rough year, New York City rebounded, and I became the chief of staff and deputy to President Sexton when he took over as president in May 2002. Now, John Sexton's ambition was initially to strengthen and enlarge the Faculty of Arts and Science at NYU, and that consumed most of us in his administration for the first several years of his term. We then started thinking, and he became a visionary again, about how NYU could leverage its advantages and truly compete with the world's best universities. It wouldn't be on money because we were less well endowed than those institutions, but he found a number of areas where we could build. And it turned out that the best idea was the Global Network University, a way to bring the world to NYU and take NYU people out to the world in meaningful ways. We began by expanding the university's global academic centers, some of which had been operating for many years, such as in Paris and London and Madrid. But over the years since, NYU has added Berlin, Prague, Tel Aviv, Buenos Aires, Sydney, Shanghai, Ghana, Abu Dhabi, Washington, DC, which some call a foreign country, and most recently, Los Angeles. Our global footprint is without peer. But the transformational event was the decision to establish NYU Abu Dhabi. It came about as NYU was seeking a global academic spot in the Gulf region. Abu Dhabi was one of the places that was suggested to us, and a meeting between the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, was arranged for John to get together. The Crown Prince and John Sexton together was instant chemistry. Those of us who knew him and heard about that first meeting knew that history was going to be made. His Highness told John, a global academic center where people come to study for a semester or maybe a summer is not enough. His idea was bigger. He wanted to know if there was a Western institution willing to partner with the government of Abu Dhabi to create a Western-style university in Abu Dhabi that could compete with the very best universities in the world. The vision was much more than we had planned, but it was infinitely appealing. And John immediately understood that nothing of this significance or magnitude had ever happened anywhere in the world. It would be a first in global higher education. So after some lengthy discussions about the contours of the university, the protocols, freedoms, limitations, and overall objectives, NYU and the government of Abu Dhabi signed the Memorandum of Understanding in November 2007 to create NYU AD. This historic decision formed the backdrop for my own intense cross-cultural immersion. Now, at the time, as Lynn has mentioned, I was serving as John's chief of staff and deputy. In the spring of 2008, I decided to ask John a fateful question that launched this journey. I asked if there was any assignment he could give me, any project that I could do in the UAE while still retaining my residence in New York. I'd like to get familiar with the country, I said. As your chief of staff, I get pummeled with questions. Why are we doing this project? Why there? And I felt I would have a way to answer those questions coming into the president's office if I had actually some experience there. So he knew I had been teaching the University Leadership Honors course at NYU for many years. And he thought maybe the ideal project for me to satisfy this interest of mine would be to give me a project that His Highness mentioned to him, that he'd like to have some kind of Crown Prince Scholars Program that would introduce students not attending NYU Abu Dhabi, but familiarize themselves, acquaint them with our new campus. It would be a way for community outreach to occur coming from the university to other citizens in the region. And perhaps through the program itself, these scholars could become future leaders of the region. We could help groom them. So that moves to my second stage. I've already talked about origins. This is how I got to the UAE. Now, what did I do? Well, I became a startup expert. I had no idea I was that good at this sort of thing, but the first stage of this startup experience was to figure out what I'd gotten myself into. Frankly, I did not know very much at all about the country. I didn't know what the education system was like. I'd never met any people from the UAE, unfortunately, but I was very eager to learn. I asked John, well, what did the Crown Prince have in mind? What do you have in mind for me to do? And I got some sketchy information that helped guide me. He said, get to know Her Highness Sheikh Mariët bint Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. She's the Crown Prince's eldest child and his representative in this regard. And you already know Mariët Westermann. She had been the wonderful head of the Institute of Fine Arts at NYU in New York, so you knew her already, but she's now the provost at NYU Abu Dhabi. They're both in the UAE. Meet with them, the three of you can come up with some plans. Sounds fine? The second thing, it's up to you. Plan the whole program from whole cloth, brand new, everything. The courses, the structure, the curriculum, the extracurriculars, the co-curricular activities, students, faculty, staffing. You have to think it all up, figure out what you need. You're going to have independence. You're going to have a chance to use whatever your experience is in administration, which is considerable, to put this together. And John told me that he'd already announced to His Highness that he, John Sexton, was going to teach the first class, a version of his seminar on the Supreme Court and religion that he had been teaching at NYU since 1981. John then said, say, you could teach the leadership class. You're already teaching one. Why don't you teach one and adapt it to the UAE? I said, that sounds good. He then said, His Highness wants the program to be mixed gender, which was actually a little controversial back in 2008. And your selection would come from the students at the 3 federal universities in the UAE, United Arab Emirates University, Zayed University, and the higher colleges of technology. He wanted it to be a select program, sort of elite, so be sure that you make it an honor to be chosen for this. And the thought was run it during the academic year, and maybe if there's time, throw in a trip to NYU in New York. They might enjoy that, and it helps cement the relationship between the two institutions in the 2 locations. Well, I realized I had to get over there because I'd never been, and I wanted to get my bearings, make my contacts, meet Sheikh Mariam, etc. So fortunately, right around then, mid-April of 2008, John was already planning a trip there, taking his sister and brother-in-law and the 2 people he'd identified to be his teaching assistants for this class he was going to teach there. He then sprung on me the timetable. He said, Diane, I don't know what you do to put this program together, but my first class date is September 14, 2008. Wow, I said, that's barely 5 months from now, and 2.5 months of that is a summer. Okay, we'll do it. We'll come up with something so we can start the program September 14th. And I went on this trip. We had a wonderful time. I met with Sheikh Mariam, saw Mariët Westermann. We even had time to do a little dune bashing, camel riding, and I got to see what a fascinating country the UAE was. Now, step 2 was figuring out how I'd be able to operate. People kept asking me in New York if I was worried about how I would be treated or perceived. They wanted to know, do you think your gender, your race, your nationality, or religion are going to be a problem? They wondered if I was going to be restricted in terms of what I could wear or how much freedom I would have to move around, whether I would be taken seriously. I said, I didn't expect any problems. And in fact, I was absolutely right. I had none. I was treated beautifully. The Bedouins are noted for their hospitality, and I experienced that famous generosity of spirit towards visitors over and over again. I fell in love with the people, the food, the desert, and the culture. I even sort of got used to the summer heat, sort of. I got help from all quarters, from local residents, university officials, higher education and government officials, and my eventual students. Everyone was kind and all wanted to help make the program a success, which guaranteed that we'd be off to a great start. So in putting the program together, I had the full support of Sheikh and Mariët Westermann, and things started to fall into place with remarkable ease. I will always remember fondly one particular story, and that was how we got the 3 federal universities to agree to cooperate with us, because in theory, this new university would become a rival of theirs. So why would they want to help us by supplying some of their best students for this special program? Well, we thought it's prestigious, it has His Highness's name, but I said, if I write them a letter and say, I'd like you to meet with me to hear about the program, I wasn't sure they'd make it a priority because I was a stranger to them. But I whispered to Sheikh Mariam, if you send the invitation to the vice chancellors of the 3 universities and invite them to come to the palace to discuss this program, I think we'll have a much better response. She laughed and said, absolutely, we'll do that. She invited them. Of course, they all came and brought their provosts, and Mariët Westermann and I were there to help explain the program to them and what we needed, which was essentially to start off by their nominating 20 of their best students to be part of the consideration. And then we would select the class from those nominees after some interviews. So we needed them to move fast. We only gave them a few weeks to come up and identify those students, get the dossiers together so we could review them. We would conduct the interviews. And then because John wanted to start September 14th, we had to have the class picked in time for them to get ready. But it was a wonderful experience working with Sheikh Mariam, and it's still a wonderful experience working with Mariët. So it was great to have that inaugural meeting with the vice chancellors and the provosts of those universities. And we have enjoyed wonderful support ever since. Since I had complete design control, it was great. Can you imagine what it's like to create a whole program through the inspiration of a wonderful visionary, His Highness Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed, and the support and leadership of a wonderful president in John Sexton? I was in heaven. It was such great fun. It was lots of work. I was still serving as chief of staff and deputy to the president in New York, but I was thrown into this with such wonderful enthusiasm. It was just great. I focused on several aspects in trying to create this program. First, the academic rigor. Anything that had His Highness's name on it had to be first class. Anything John Sexton was going to be teaching in had to be first class. And if I was going to spend my own time teaching, I wanted to make sure it was first class. So it had to have high academic standards, both in terms of the entering students, which is why we had such a complicated and very detailed selection process, and also a way to make sure they kept up with their work. So we would have assignments, they would have work to do, they would be prepared for class, they would learn how to do things, they would learn how to apply critical thinking and debating skills, they would learn how to write, they'd learn how to defend their positions, and they would improve their various speaking and other abilities. So we came up with 4 classes that they would learn. One was the academic one that John would teach. In future years, we split the class in 2, and there was a choice of 2 different academic classes. John taught one, and another person would teach the other. I would teach the leadership class. I found someone to teach a critical thinking and persuasive writing class, and I found another person to teach the public speaking class. I actually took over the public speaking class in 2014, so now I teach 2. But it basically was that curriculum, and it ended up being very demanding, hard work, lots of tough reading and writing, but the students have thrived on it. In terms of the cross-cultural awareness, His Highness had suggested a trip to the NYU in New York, and I added Washington, D.C. because I said, Abu Dhabi is the capital of the UAE, they should come to the capital of the United States. So they would visit some of the government institutions, cultural institutions, meet leaders in both New York and Washington, D.C., and it would be a terrific bonding experience for the students. They'd learn how to develop their professional networks and start with the Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed scholars themselves. We also encourage them to pursue graduate study and other activities that would help groom them for future leadership roles. And I realized in the end that if John and I were both teaching in this program, we would be flying over to Abu Dhabi a lot. I had no idea. I ended up for a number of years flying 1 to 2 times a month, because as executive director, I was running the program, and as an instructor, I was teaching, and I basically had only 1/4 of a staff person in Abu Dhabi. Later, I got another 1/4 of a second staff person to run the program. So it was quite a skeleton crew, but we had a wonderful time. Now, step 3 in this part was the formation of the Summer Academy. We'd had such a great first year in the Scholars Program that I then got my next assignment from His Highness and from John Sexton, and that was, we'd like you to create a college preparatory academy for high potential Emirati high school students. We started in Abu Dhabi. We have since expanded to the Northern Emirates as well, but we would call it the NYU Abu Dhabi Summer Academy. And the students who make it through the competitive stages of selection would win the Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed scholarships for outstanding high school students. And we would like perhaps many of them to consider applying to NYU Abu Dhabi, but we really want to help them reach top tier English language universities around the world as well. So advise them on good, best colleges, and some might want to come to NYUAD, and that would be delightful. I asked myself, do I know anything about designing a high school program? Not really. Did I know how to develop a curriculum with the goal of helping students prepare for college? Not really. But was I willing to take on this challenge? Absolutely. I figured I will try to apply what I had learned from building the Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Scholars Program. I could ask some of my students, I'd ask some of the people I've been working with on that program for their advice. I would consult with others who had taught high school, both in Abu Dhabi and in the US, get some advice. So I assembled a team. We put together a program to plan. We did a lot of interviews. We came up with a curriculum to plan for what would best prepare these high potential students to get into those top tier universities. So we had critical thinking and writing, of course, that's essential. We had, I thought, leadership and public speaking, we thought would add. I could adapt the Sheikh Mohammed course for this high school group. We would have something called standardized test preparation, because many, especially at the time, wanting to go to US schools would have to take an SAT or ACT, and plus some of the English language tests like IELTS and TOEFL. And the 4th class had to do with math. We decided math as the underpinning for the sciences would be a good, more cross-cutting course for them. So those were the 4 classes we did for the Summer Academy. We had the first class through our highly selective, very complex selection process, came in the summer of 2011. We had a trip planned for them at the end. This is where we made one mistake. We made it a 2-week trip to Florence, our NYU campus there, that's very secure, gated. Nobody could get in except those who have a pass and authorization. It had its own classrooms, residence halls, cafeteria, and beautiful grounds in Villa La Pietra. But we realized after that 2-week trip that it was too exhausting for the staff and faculty. So we ended up shrinking it to 1 week. And the second summer, those students would come back. And at the end of the summer, they'd go to New York. We figured by then we could handle New York and them because they had already traveled with us. We knew them well, and we knew that they would stay in line because it's a pretty big city to get lost in if anything happened. So we put that whole program together. We launched in 2011. In 2012, we had the 2011 students come back, and the new class started because we ended up making this an 18-month program spanning 2 summers and an academic year and a half. It was wonderful. Those students, just like the scholars, were eager to learn. They absorbed everything. They were energetic. They were highly motivated, and they were fun. They really were. High school students are really a blast. My happy experience in Abu Dhabi then led me to an offer to accept a volunteer teaching job at our newest campus at NYU Shanghai, which Mariët Westermann has mentioned. At the request of the provost there, Joanna Whaley Cohen, I started teaching a public speaking class in Shanghai. and I loved it. It was so much fun. Shanghai is a beautiful place. It was where my mother and father went to medical school. That's where they met. So it felt like a roots kind of story for me to be there. And I was welcomed as an overseas Chinese person. My Chinese is a bit rusty, but it was fun. I could use it and I could eat the wonderful food and enjoy the beautiful sights of that magnificent city. I ended up doing that for several years, and it has been just a joy to every once in a while see some of the students that I taught there. Well, I've described how I got to the UAE, what I did there. Now the third story is simply, what have I learned? What do I reflect on when I think about this extraordinary opportunity I've had to work in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, and actually in New York? Well, what I've learned is my students have taught me so much more than I've ever given them. I've taught every single Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed scholar since 2008. I've taught every single summer academy student since 2011, and that numbers over 500 students collectively. I've taught every student in my university leadership honors class in New York since I started that class in 2002. What I've learned from my students is priceless, it's powerful, and it has pervaded all of my thinking about the potential for the human race, because these young people have so much power, so much energy, so much intelligence, and so much compassion. I really believe that the future has a good shot of being a future because of what I've learned from them. I've also learned how beautiful an experience it is to have an extraordinary staff to work with. I often tell my Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed community program staff, most in Abu Dhabi, a couple in New York, that they are the best staff on earth. And they are. They make it a joy to come to work every day. So I've been so lucky to have that great opportunity for staff. And the faculty we've worked with in both the Summer Academy and the Sheikh Mohammed Scholars Program have been fantastic too. They have given so much. They fall in love with our mission just as we did. And it means so much because we all care about making the student experience a great one. My final reflections are more in the way of thoughts for any of you contemplating something like this. To gain the most from any cross-cultural learning opportunity, you have to want to start to do this. You have to have that mindset. You have to want to be challenged, to be willing to take risks, to be willing to be uncomfortable because of your lack of familiarity of the uncharted territory that you are now covering. There will be moments of anxiety, of ambiguity. You're going to make mistakes. You have to understand that. You have to absorb that, and you have to be ready to shed any preconceived notions, biases, or prejudices you might have. This takes some courage and it takes some will, but you can do it. Secondly, to learn the most from people, listen and watch, absorb, ask questions. Don't be afraid to expose your ignorance. You're new to it. Why would you know some of these things? Show your sincere interest and make the effort to learn. It will be appreciated. Third, to have a positive effect on the new society, which I recommend you consider, find ways to spend time in service to others. It cannot just be about your own self-learning and self-improvement. To have an impact that makes a difference, you've got to think about what you can offer, what you can contribute. So try to understand and cherish the differences in culture, societal norms, and customs. Sure, some of them may be difficult or even troubling, but remember that undoubtedly the same can be said for customs and norms in your own country. I was so fortunate because the things I was asked to do had DNA of community service built into them. So I never had a problem on that score. 4, expect the unexpected. The discovery and experimentation part is a special element of this whole endeavor of becoming cross-culturally exposed. And yes, you may make those mistakes, as I said, but overall, you will have a remarkably wonderful time. I am confident of that. Because in the end, the 5th comment is realize that cross-cultural experiences will change you. So welcome and embrace that change. You'll forever see that the world will look different to you. You'll have a higher perspective, a broader range of thinking, and you will feel more deeply about the beauties of these differences between and amongst people and our similarities. And that's all to the good. I call this speech my living case history because I'm still in the thick of it. And I continue to learn things every week that I'm in contact with my students, staff, and friends in Abu Dhabi. It has made me a stronger instructor and given me more motivation. I know I have found my calling. I've spoken to my students about leaving a legacy, and I now recognize that I was meant to establish the Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Scholars Program, the NYU Abu Dhabi Summer Academy, the New York University Leadership Honors Course, and my NYU Shanghai public speaking class. They did not exist before I came along, and I've tried very hard to impart the best of my knowledge and experience into them. It's been a great marriage of opportunity and passion in every sense of the words. It may sound strange to hear this, but that's why I think I was put on earth, to be part of this new culture and environment in the UAE, to be part of the most progressive and innovative nations, one of the most progressive and innovative nations in the world, and to play some role in connecting the East-West cultures through these community building programs. Having this part to play has given me far more than I've taken and given to others, but please, let's keep that a secret because I want people to think I'm working hard at making a contribution on my own. In any event, I hope that the best lived life is the one you have, where you find such meaning and purpose in what you do, because it leads you to love. So my wish for all of you is that you will find this same kind of enrichment and fulfillment that I have for yourselves. Bless you all, and thank you for your kind attention and invitation.
Thank you so much, Professor Yu. I believe our audience has learned a lot from your inspiring speech and your experience in cross-cultural understanding. Now we have received a few questions for Professor Yu from the audience. And so I will proceed to read out those questions to you. So the first question says, thank you for your amazing keynote speech. I've learned a lot from your experience. I have a question about opportunities. It sounds like you started your new journey because of the encounter with John, which is a great opportunity that came to your way. How should young people prepare for upcoming opportunities? What if there are not enough opportunities? What shall we do?
Well, it's a great question. I don't know if I have an answer that would satisfy all of you. I know I was fortunate because throughout my life, I've always been involved in things. I've always been active in things. And 4 of my last jobs I got because of contacts I made through volunteer activities. I met John because we were both involved in the American Bar Association. He was a law school dean, I was a lawyer. We both volunteered our time to help make the profession better through those kinds of professional activities. Previous people I also met through activities that I was involved in, not through my schoolwork and not through friends and not through relatives or anything else. So I would say the first thing is get involved in things you care about, because you'll meet other people who care about those things, and you might find that your professional network starts expanding as you get involved. But you're going to have to work. It's not good enough just to be a member. I really do believe you have to put in some time. The second thing is manage your time. Make sure you have enough time every week for things that help strengthen your skills, improve your reach, build your network. So do some things on a conscious basis to learn and be good. A lot of people meet people in college and in graduate school. They sometimes meet people through work, but I know what you're thinking about are jobs and other career opportunities. So I would get involved. I would manage your time so that you could fit those things in and do good work. I mean, John would tell me, I noticed what you were doing. Anyone who's going to rise to be chair of the section of legal education and admissions to the bar of the American Bar Association has accomplished something. So you have to do quality work in order to be noticed, and seek out, the last thing is seek out mentors wherever you can go. People whom you think can help you in some way, give you advice, be willing to get feedback, even if it's not universally positive. You learn a lot from feedback that tells you what's not working. So be open to that. So try those 4 things.
Thank you so much for your answer. And we have a second question. The second question says, what will be your key piece of advice to inspiring young leaders?
Oh, well, boy, it's hard to find one key piece of advice, I guess, is make time to develop yourself as a person. Don't try just so hard to be a leader. Try to be a quality person whom people want to work with and for. And that includes developing your personality so that you are open to the kind of differences that I mentioned that make life rich, make it more complicated to be sure, but much richer. If we all thought alike, it'd be pretty boring. If we all looked alike, it would be pretty boring. So get used to the diversity and include people, be open to that. And also find some people, or preferably even one person, who can be your true soulmate, someone you can work with. I was married for 25 years to the most fabulous person in the world. He suddenly and shockingly passed away a few years ago. I miss him every day, but wow, the years we had together were so fantastic, so wonderful. So I hope everyone finds someone they can be with who will see and help bring out the best in you, and that you could do the same for them. So I guess I would say those 2 things, not one, but be the best kind of person you can be and find someone to be your partner. I think that will make a big difference as a young leader, as a middle-aged leader, as an elder leader. All those things I think are important.
Great. Thank you so much for your speech and for taking the questions from the audience.